Now, President Joe Biden, the US president, is in Africa for his maiden trip since his election, and he's visiting Angola, a country that's close to us somehow. Like we can, people outside Africa thinks Africa is one small space, but we are big. However, he's visiting Africa, and there's mixed feelings of his visit across, not just for us as Kenyans or even for Angolans or basically across Africa. He promised to visit Africa in 2022, but he didn't manage. Then he was supposed to come in earlier in September, October. Then a hurricane happened, and then he postponed again because he had to deal with his people first. But yeah, finally, he's in Africa. So he arrived for his long-awaited first presidential visit to Sub-Saharan on Monday to cheers, and thousands of Angolans were happy to have the US president visit. I mean, whatever, that comes with that. So the 3-day visit largely has been focusing on the Lobito corridor railway development in Zambia, Congo and Angola. Basically, this railway, Lobito, the corridor cuts across different countries. And by now, I hope you can start speculating where this conversation is going. Yeah, I mean, Africa has had this thing of facing east or west, and now the US has been feeling it's left out because a lot of allies of theirs who've been big have been facing the East for some reason. People have been partnering with China, Russia, and all these other nations. So now this trip is looked at as a place where now US is trying to maintain its footing across Africa. That's why they are visiting. But anyway, that's a story that people are talking about. So the trip aims to advance the US presence in the region, that is critical. It has a lot of minerals, and these minerals are what is actually used in the manufacture of batteries for electric vehicles, electronic devices like phones, and clean energy technologies. And you know who's big on making these electric cars? China. So China is across this belt. A lot of Chinese business and mining is in this space. So this trip feels like the US is coming to establish a foot so that the dominance of China is something they are trying to beat in their way. So this trip and this corridor is something they are working on to see if they can indeed get their space. So it also aims to advance its presence in the region, and critical minerals that are also mined by Chinese companies and other stakeholders and investors. So basically, the US wants a share of that. He will also travel to the Lobito for a look at the rail project. This project is basically, the goal is to build a rail that can help transport goods from Africa across these nations and get them out. So the Biden administration has called the corridor one of the president's signature initiatives, and yet the future of this project is actually now pegged on President Trump's interests in Africa, if he has any. Remember previously, President Trump has referred to Africa countries as shithole countries. So it begs the question, do you think this Lobito corridor, I mean, it would be such a good project if finished, but do you think this is something that will interest Trump and his administration? That's something we can't judge for now, but the current government said they are hoping that the project will push forward even with the incoming administration futuristic. The US has committed $3 billion to the Lobito corridor and other related projects. And they've called it the flagship for the G7's new partnership for global infrastructure and investment, which has been driven by Biden, and the aim is to reach other developing nations. So it's actually also supposed to connect with Tanzania, and then once you connect with Tanzania, the whole of East Africa is able to connect to the West, Central Africa, and that way. So use of the corridor of the Red Sea to export whatever we have in Africa. So the Lobito corridor will be an upgrade and extension of a railway line from the copper and cobalt mines of northern Zambia and southern Congo to Angola's port of Lobito, strengthening a route west for Africa's critical minerals. I don't understand why we need, because the target is these minerals. Why is it that the US is so big on targeting our minerals so that they can get them out? Like, can't we put investments here? Or if they really had the will, can they put up established companies that can actually help African countries, number one, generate money here and bring people together, and then we can also export. Like where we build as the supplier of raw, this cobalt, copper, send it away, then go buy a phone, import a phone, because anyway, this, to me, this is neo-colonization, and if you ask me, I feel it is, the project is good for, but if you look at the value it would bring if these establishments were done here in Africa, this would be more and better. And I don't know why the leadership of Africa does not call for this establishment of these companies here. Like, why is it that we have to go manufacture these chips in some country and not do it here? Like, are we sure we can't have a bilateral agreement where then we put up these companies here so that we're able to do these things here and export? The president of Kenya was in the US and said he spoke to, is it the Apple Silicon Valley something, and they agreed some of those things would be, I think the chips would be done like in Kenya. How about then for this project, we establish Angola, Zambia has its own, why not? Like African leaders, why not? Why is it that we are happy we want to export raw materials, which goes, once it goes out, the value increases when it's out there, but when it's here, we are getting so little. I hope we can change this. Remember, Congo has more than 70% of the world's cobalt, which is what they use for these things, the electric cars which they are selling to us. So imagine if these things were established in Congo or Zambia or whichever country that has the minerals. Like, why are we sending them away? I don't like that. Anyway, I hope our leadership and the future leaderships of each country across Africa is working towards transforming this mindset and the way things run so that we can change the world, and not just the world for you out there, change Africa as a whole. He was also said to go see the slavery museum where imagine, he's going to see the slavery museum where he's supposed to acknowledge how the trafficking of human beings once linked the two nations. I mean, I hope he's able to apologize and pay back, because these are people who suffered to make America great. And then now, in that suffering, they end up being told they are immigrants and being sent back. You know, like, the inequalities in this world are just so depressing, and especially if you look at it from the Western versus African. I don't like it, and I hope those are things that can be looked at and that can change. So a spokesman of the presidency said that when giving his speech, Biden will acknowledge both the horrific history of slavery that connected our two nations, but also look towards a future that's predicated on a shared vision that benefits both people. Truth is, there is really no fairness in putting up a corridor that exports all the products you have in its raw form, then you go process and bring back. No, that needs to change. I hope we will find a way. I mean, it's a process. Let's work towards making these companies be established in Africa, and then we can also export. I mean, if we're able to manufacture a phone, then we can also export it. Or if any of those manufacturers needs those chips and anything, then they can come here and establish a company, and we get value from the scratch. The US has for years, they say, has built relations in Africa through trade, security, and humanitarian aid. And the railway upgrade is a different move and has shades of China Belt and Road foreign infrastructure strategy in Africa, which was also the same for China, by the way. All they came is do a lot of development, but so that they can benefit in terms of exchange, because they come do roads, they come do all this infrastructure, but the only advantage is they also work with local people. So that's the difference between doing infrastructure and basically exporting. So he also said that Biden said that the corridor was about more than simply Washington trying to outspace Beijing politically, geopolitically. I don't trust that. For me, I believe it's basically a competition of who will have the bigger chunk of Africa. It's another season of neocolonialism, and it's basically, remember when we had the scramble for Africa, when colonialism was at its peak. Now, this is the scramble for Africa, the new Africa, in what they're calling neocolonialism. And I'm hoping Africa, we can wake up and change these things or do better for ourselves, for our future, for our children's future, and for the continent, basically, yeah? You share with me your highlights from Biden's visit in Angola in the comment section and tell me generally what you feel about it, yeah? Thanks for watching. We will catch you on the next episodes.